In today's episode, I ruined your weekend? That suck. Strict professor wants me to prove that I'm trying to improve my grades? I'll give her just that. This MC might sink his career. So let's get started. I ruined your weekend? That suck. About 10 years ago, I was a regional manager for a transportation and logistics company. At the time, each regional office worked as a sort of independent company in that we had our own sales and accounting teams as well as compliance people like safety and a driver trainer. I'll start by admitting that I never fully got accounting. I took the class in college, but honestly it was still confusing. I am not totally lost looking at the reports, but how they get there is Greek to me. I chalk it up to black magic. Our accounting department was the largest office team with a whopping 3 people, the accounts manager, and 2 clerks, one for accounts receivable and one for accounts payable. All the other teams were just 2 people. We also had maintenance and loading dock crews, but they weren't part of the office. Well, in their infinite wisdom, our corporate office decided that they were going to merge some regions as a cost-saving measure. To be fair, it did save money, but it greatly increased our workload. I had all my departments submit a report on what they needed in order to meet the increased load. The loading dock manager actually had a brilliant plan that involved only hiring one new worker, promoting one to be an assistant manager, and putting them on rotating 50-hour weeks. It was cheaper than hiring a bunch of guys, and they all agreed to it. The maintenance shop wanted 2 more mechanics. But this isn't about them. The accounts manager asked for 2 additional A/or clerks. I was hesitant at first, but then I saw the amount of paperwork they had to process now, so I authorized it. The A/or clerk's job was to take a paperwork packet the driver had for each delivery, would sort the papers in it, then enter data in a spreadsheet. The accounts manager used the spreadsheets along with necromancy to summon billing documents from the void to send to our customers. It was a pretty efficient system. I had a policy regarding overtime. Department managers had discretion to hand out overtime up to 10 hours a week as long as they could justify it reasonably. However, if a manager required a subordinate to work overtime, the manager would work the same overtime. Our managers were salaried and exempted from overtime, and I didn't want them working their people all the time while they only worked 40 hours. Amazingly, after I implemented this policy, overtime went way down. I mention this because at year-end the accounting team always needed a ton of overtime in order to get all the closing work done on top of their normal duties. It usually involved them working as much as 80 hours a week for the whole month of January, and usually they only finished at the last minute. I usually gave them a 4-day weekend at the end. The accounts manager was usually pretty cool, not entitled, and did a good job. But this particular year, when we had even more work to do, she tried to pull a really bullsh T move. In the middle of January, as they are all working a ton to get through year-end, she announces she'll be gone for a weekend to go to a concert with some of her friends. So I asked her if she had a plan in place to make up for the lost work time with no one here working on the weekend. She looked at me confused, but the clerks will be here. Me only if you are too. You are familiar with my policy. I'm okay with you all taking the weekend off, but I need to know that all the year-end work will be done in time. I do have a plan. They are working the weekend to cover for my absence. To be fair, her clerks probably didn't care, and I would have been willing to ease up on the policy in this case, because she usually was pretty good about this stuff. However, her tone completely changed that. I'm easygoing, but my subordinates do not dictate to me how things are going to be, and I told her as much. I finished with, either you are all working this weekend, or none of you are. Let me know by the end of the day. In the end, she couldn't figure out a reasonable way to make up for the lost time, and she was at the office with her team. I was there too, because my policy applied to me as well. The only exception I gave myself was the loading dock crew, because there was always someone there on overtime. The accounts manager was pretty cold towards me the whole time, and on Sunday she informs me that I ruined her weekend. I considered pulling her aside to let her know sorting through driver paperwork for 12 hours a day wasn't my weekend plan either, but instead just nodded and said, "That sucks." A few weeks later she did apologize for her behavior, and I told her I was sorry she missed her concert, and that unfortunately that is part of working life, sometimes we miss out on things. Funny enough, she said that her friends thought the concert sucked really bad, and even told her that she was lucky she didn't have to go. Strict professor wants me to prove that I'm trying to improve my grades? I'll give her just that. When I was a freshman in college, I had a maths teacher who was very strict about how she taught and how she expected us to learn. For example, she would force students to take notes, and if they didn't, she would make them leave. During our midterm exam, someone asked how much time was left, and she said 5 minutes. At this point, I was only about halfway done with the test, so I rushed and finished it barely in time. Me and most other students delivered the test and left the room. When I checked my phone, I realized there was another 20 minutes left. The students who hadn't finished in time told me that after we left, she realized that she read the clock wrong and gave them another 20 minutes that me and the others didn't have. I've always been pretty good at math, but obviously, after rushing half the test, I didn't get a good grade. The part 1 didn't rush was perfect though. The next class, after showing us our results, she said that we needed to develop a strategy to improve our grades. She said that if we created a plan, stuck to it, and provided evidence of us doing it, she would give us some extra credit. What she expected us to do was say something like, "I'll practice every week and submit pictures of us doing it as evidence," or something like that. Now, while I didn't blame her for reading the clock wrong, I did blame the fact that I thought I only had 5 minutes left for not doing well on that test. I was confident that I could have gotten a perfect grade on it if I had the extra 20 minutes. And so, what I said I would do is bring a watch to the next exam. Was it an arrogant thing to say? Yes, but I also thought it was stupid to follow along with her plan to micromanage our studies. She got mad at me and said that if I didn't do anything else I would fail the final for sure, but I assured her that the watch was enough for me to do better. A few months later, on the day of the final, I submitted a picture of a watch on my wrist as my evidence for sticking with the strategy. I got a perfect grade on the final. Since my strategy for improving my grades worked, she had to give me extra credit, not before arguing that I didn't deserve it, of course. This MC might sink his career. I work in a restaurant, and on this particular day I was on bar with a coworker. There had been basically no customers for a couple of hours, and we had already stocked up and cleaned everything we could reach, so we were just hanging out at that point. Enter Todd. He had recently been promoted from waitstaff to team leader, and had transformed from a genuinely cool and chill guy to an arrogant hard-ass practically overnight. He was always on everybody's asses to work harder, and could never admit he was ever wrong about anything. He comes in and is immediately on the offensive, which is fair enough as we were just kinda stood around drinking tea at that point. He's listing off all the jobs we should be doing, and in turn we confirm that we've already done each and every one of them. This seems to only piss him off more, and he starts listing more and more obscure jobs in an attempt to catch us out. He points to the large metal utility sink under the bar and asks if we've cleaned that. Yes, of course we have. He actually gets his phone out and uses the flashlight to peer down the half-inch gap between the sink and the wall. "Oh no, you haven't," he exclaims, the smugness in his voice so thick you could spread it on toast. "You need to pull this out and clean behind it. It has to be done properly." "Pull it out?" I ask. "Yes. God, it's not hard to understand, is it?" He huffs. Now, anyone who has worked in a bar or kitchen probably knows what one of these looks like, but for anyone who doesn't, you could conceivably be forgiven for thinking it was just a lightweight metal table, except for the fact that, it has a built-in sink on one end of it. But hey, boss knows best, right? I give my coworker a look. We both shrug, grab an end each, and heave as hard as we can. There was a wonderful combination of noises: the squealing of metal against the floor, a sudden crack, and what I can only describe as a comical boink as a pipe broke off and clattered onto the ground. I'm not any sort of a plumber, so I can't give details about what broke, but we weren't able to use that sink for several days, and the metal legs left impressive gouges in the linoleum floor. Of course, we got yelled at even though we did as we were told, but Todd never quite lived it down and ultimately didn't last long as team leader. Thanks for watching.